I'll never forget the eerie quiet that hit me when I stepped out to my driveway that morning. My car was gone. Not stolen, but towed. From my own private driveway. It felt like a punch to the stomach. At first, I doubted myself. Did I park somewhere else? Was it street sweeping day? But no, right there, screaming in neon orange, was a sticker plastered on my garage door. Improperly parked vehicle removed per HOA Regulation 4.2b. I stood there stunned, clutching that notice like it was a cruel prank. It wasn't. I just moved into Maple Grove, my dream home, a few months earlier. Quiet streets, towering trees, neighbors wavwang like they're auditioning for a feel-good movie. But I'd heard rumors about the HOA strict, petty, drunk on power. I figured if I followed the rules I'd be fine. Clearly I was wrong. Let me know in the comments where you're reading from. I am curious if this kind of madness happens in your neighborhood too. I spent the next hour dialing every number on that sticker. The towing company? No answer. The HOA hotline? Straight to voicemail. It wasn't until I borrowed my partner's car and drove 45 minutes to the impound lot that someone finally picked up. When I asked why my car was towed from my own home, the guy behind the counter just shrugged and said, "Talk to the HOA. We just follow orders." That's when it sank in, his wasn't a mistake. So I did what the guy suggested. I headed straight to the HOA officer rather. The flimsy trailer they called an office, tucked behind the community pool like they were embarrassed by it. That's where I met him, the self-proclaimed king of Maple Grove. Picture a guy in a reflective vest, mirrored sunglasses, clutching a clipboard like he's starring in a low-budget cop drama. Let's call him Greg because, well, it fits. He sized me up like I just tracked dirt across his pristine world. "Hey," I said, "my car got towed from my driveway. I need to know why." Without missing a beat, he replied, "You violate HOA Regulation 4.2b. No vehicle may obstruct the sidewalk, even partially, at any time." I blinked. It wasn't on the sidewalk. It was in my driveway. He smirked. "Your bumper was overhanging by about 3 inches. We have photos." I'm not one to lose my temper, but something about his smug tone made my blood boil. I asked to see the photos. He refused. I asked who authorized the tow. He said he did. I asked why no one contacted me first. He just said, "We don't need to. You agreed to the rules when you bought the place." That's when I realized who I was dealing with. This wasn't about a bumper. It was about control. Greg lived for this. He wasn't a cop, not a city official, not even a security guard. But in his mind, he ran Maple Grove like it was his personal fiefdom, and I just crossed him. I left that trailer feeling like I'd been scolded by a hall monitor with delusions of grandeur. Still, I clung to a sliver of hope maybe there was someone above him, someone reasonable. So I started making calls. First, the local police department. I explained everything, the tow, the driveway, Greg acting like he's the law. The officer sighed and said, "Sounds like a civil issue. We don't get involved in HOA disputes unless there's a crime. Strike one." Next, I tried the city zoning department, code enforcement, even a city council member. Same story every time. The HOA is a private entity. We don't oversee their enforcement. So let me get this straight, a group of neighbors can form a board, write their own rules, fine me, tow my car, and there's no oversight? No appeals? That's when it hit me, the system isn't broken. It's built this way. HOAs like the one in Maple Grove are tiny kingdoms and Greg was the king. I dove into the HOA documents, every mind-numbing page. Buried in the fine print were clauses designed to trap you, towing thresholds only Greg could interpret, vague rules about community aesthetics, penalties that doubled if violations repeated within 90 days, even if they were subjective. It was a machine, and I'd walked right into it. Arguing with Greg or the HOA board felt pointless, they held all the cards. But something about the towing company nagged at me. Who tows a car from a private driveway in broad daylight without knocking? I started digging. The sticker said, "Citywide Towing Solutions." Sounded legit, but a quick search turned up nothing. Website, no reviews, just a sketchy listing with a dead phone number. Red flags everywhere. I called a friend who works in city logistics and asked if he'd heard of them. He hadn't, but he sent me a link to the state's commercial towing registry. Surprise, Citywide Towing Solutions wasn't listed. No license, no inspection records, nothing. My brain started racing. If they weren't legit, every tow Greg ordered was illegal. Not just shady loss at level shady. Then I remembered my cousin, Mike, who runs a towing business in the next county. I called him and asked about Citywide. He laughed. Yeah, total clowns. Their trucks are junk and they've been dropped from 3 contracts in the last year. That's when it clicked. The weak link wasn't just Greg's ego, it was the towing company itself. Mike knew the owner of Citywide, said the guy was desperate to sell behind on taxes, drowning in fines, barely keeping the lights on. I asked one question. Think he'd sell to a quiet investor? 2 weeks later, through an LLC I set up, I own Citywide Towing Solutions. Every beat-up truck, every clipboard, every bad decision mine. And Greg? He had no idea. I didn't change a thing, not the name, not the staff. I kept it running like nothing happened. But now every tow order Greg sent came to me. License plates, addresses, photos, timestamps, I saw it all. And it was worse than I thought. Greg wasn't just towing for sidewalk violations. He was targeting people. Single parents with older cars, renters, anyone who didn't kiss the HOA ring. One guy got towed twice in a week for an unauthorized mailbox color. It was gray. That's how petty this was. So I started documenting everything, every shady tow, every voicemail, every time Greg strutted around like a wannabe dictator. I wasn't building a case for the cops, they wouldn't care, or even a lawyer, not yet. I was building it for the neighborhood. If I was going to take Greg down, I wanted it to be public and I wanted it to sting. I knew Greg was petty, but I didn't realize how low he'd go until the Carter incident. Mr. Carter lived a few houses down, retired, quiet, always tending his roses like it was his life's work. One morning I saw him outside, pacing, shaken. I asked what was wrong. His car had been towed overnight. I assumed it was Greg's usual nonsense, but then Mr. Carter said something that stopped me cold. My insulin was in the car. He'd just come back from the pharmacy and left his diabetic supplies in the trunk. It wasn't even midnight when the tow truck showed up, no knock, no warning, just gone. I checked the logs. Sure enough, Greg's name was on the order, timestamped 11:42 p.m. Reason: improper headlight alignment. I'm not joking. This man had a senior's car towed in the dead of night over headlights. I lost it. I called the impound lot and told them to release the car immediately, no charge. Mr. Carter got his meds back, but he was rattled. He kept thanking me, asking how I did it. I just said, I know people. But that was the final straw. Greg wasn't just a control freak. He was dangerous, someone who didn't care who he hurt as long as he felt powerful. It was time. No more waiting, no more collecting EVI Denke. I was going to expose him. A week later, Greg sent out one of his infamous urgent notices to every homeowner, bold red letters. All caps, like we were in a war zone instead of a parking dispute. He called an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse to address a disturbing rise in community violations. I almost laughed. He'd handed me the perfect stage. I got there early, sat in the back, and watched the room fill. Neighbors looked annoyed, confused, curious. Greg marched in, reflective vest gleaming, clipboard in hand, smug as ever. He kicked off with a slideshow, blurry photos of towed cars, arrows pointing to violations like encroaching 2.5 inches onto sidewalk, or unauthorized window decal. People shifted uncomfortably, whispering. The tension was palpable. Then he made his fatal mistake. He bragged. Thanks to our partnership with Citywide Towing Solutions, we've upheld the highest aesthetic standards in the area. If that means ruffling feathers, so be it. Mike, you. I stood up, calm and deliberate. Actually, Greg, I think it's time the community knew who Citywide Towing Solutions really works for. The room went silent. Greg froze like a deer in headlights. I walked to the front, carrying a folder, and set it on the table in front of him slowly, like it was radioactive. Then I turned to the crowd. For the past month, every tow in this neighborhood was ordered by Greg and approved by me. A few nervous laughs. Greg tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. I own Citywide Towing Solutions. Bought it 3 weeks ago. Set up an LLC, filed the paperwork, and started tracking every tow Greg ordered, including the one where he had Mr. Carter's car taken with his insulin inside. The room stirred. I heard someone whisper. What? I opened the folder and passed out copies. Timestamps, photos, recordings of Greg barking orders like he was running a prison. I even had a printout of the state towing registry showing Citywide wasn't licensed when Greg started using them. People were leaving UID. One woman shouted, "You towed my son's car while he was VY sighting." Another guy stood up, "You find me for my truck in my driveway while your friend parks his boat on his lawn every weekend." Greg's face was ghost white. He stammered, "You can't just ambush me like this. This isn't proper protocol." I smiled. "Now you're worried about protocol?" Then I dropped the hammer. "I've already filed a CIVYL suit against the HOA board for authorizing illegal tows, violating homeowners' rights, and gross negligence. And I'm not alone." That flipped the room. The shouting started and there was no stopping it. Greg banged his gavel yelling about order, but no one cared. He wasn't in charge anymore, just a guy in a vest, drowning. Then Mrs. Nguyen, who Greg once fined for unapproved flower pots, stood up and said, "I motion to remove Greg as HOA president, effective immediately." Someone else yelled, "Seconded." We voted right there. Hands shot up everywhere, nearly unanimous. Greg's two cronies on the board didn't even lift their heads. Greg stood there, mouth open, like his brain had crashed. Then Mike, my cousin, the real hero, walked in wearing his company jacket. He handed Greg a thick envelope. "Courtesy of Citywide Towing Solutions and our new legal team," he said with a grin. Greg didn't open it, just stared like it might explode. I leaned in. "You really should have read the fine print, especially the part about violating state towing laws. That can get you sued personally." He didn't say a word. Just grabbed his clipboard and shuffled out of the clubhouse like a man who'd watched his empire collapse. The room erupted, claps, laughs, a few stunned faces. For the first time, I felt calm, like I could breathe in my own neighborhood. Over the next few weeks, things changed fast. The HOA board was restructured. Mr. Carter, yes, that Mr. Carter became interim president. First move, suspend all towing pending a full review EW. Second, rewrite the bylaws with actual checks and balances so no one like Greg could run wild again. As for Greg, the lawsuit didn't vanish. When you greenlight illegal tows with an unlicensed company and leave a paper trail, consequences follow. Rumor has it he settled out of court with multiple homeowners, refinancing his house to cover it. Last I heard, he'd left Maple Gravely VYing with his sister 2 towns over. No HOA there. Good. I sold Citywide Towing Solutions 2 months later. Cleaned it up, got it licensed, and flipped it to a legit operator. Made a tidy profit, but that wasn't the point. The point was making sure people like Greg learn you can't bully folks and walk away clean. That's the story. If you enjoyed watching Cleverness Outsmart Entitlement, let me know in the comments where you're reading from. I'd love to hear if your HOA is as unhinged as mine was. And to Greg, wherever you are, take a hike.